can't come back after this, no? This sitting is resumed. Honourable member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As is customary, and what I have grown quite accustomed to doing is looking for a passage in the good book that brings to mind and encapsulates everything that this debate brings to my mind. And I found comfort in Philippians 4:6-7. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. And I begin there, Mr. Speaker, because I have worked on this project now for 6.5 years. 6.5 years, Mr. Speaker. I was there as the deputy chair when the member for Christchurch East was the minister for water. And every week, faithfully, the subcommittee on sewage met. Every Monday morning. I was there as the deputy chair when the minister for St. Michael West Central was the chair. And we met again constantly and consistently every week to find a solution for this problem. I was there as the deputy chair when the minister for St. Michael Southeast was the minister. And we met every week consistently and constantly. If I was not there, that means I'm out of the country. Otherwise, I was there. So I'm very, very happy to support this resolution after 6.5 years of work to get it to where we are today. It has been a very, very difficult road. But how do you condense 6.5 years of work into a 30-minute presentation? How do you do that? How do you relate to the country all the trials and tribulations and difficulties and problems that you had to solve and presentations that you had to take all the way along to get to where we are today? This is not the first thing that we looked at when it came to getting financing for this. This is not the first thing we looked at when it came to fixing the problem on the South Coast. And it is a problem. It was a problem then, and we are going to make sure that we resolve this problem no matter what, because the Barbados Labour Party came to fix the problem that they had on the South Coast. And let me say, Mr. Speaker, you know what was really interesting as I listened to the member for Christchurch South? I found it very interesting. I'll explain to you why. The vast majority of people that suffered from the problems on the South Coast were the people in Christchurch South and Christchurch West. Christchurch South and Christchurch West, because that is where the force main travels. It goes from Christchurch South, where it's treated to secondary level, and it's sent all the way down to Christchurch West, at the Hastings police station. It reaches a chamber, and it goes out then to the Needham's Point outfall. That is how sewage was treated in Barbados. But what was interesting, at no point at all in the member for Christchurch South presentation did he remember that he had constituents in Christchurch South that struggled for that period of time. I think that mentally he has embodied that he will no longer be the member for Christchurch South after the next election. I think he has mentally internalized that. Because how could a member of parliament make a presentation on sewage that was in his constituency and at no point connect to the people of St. Lawrence or connect to the people of Worthing, unless he has decided that he has conceded that the member from the other place will be the next member of parliament and he want to move to somewhere else. And I have an inkling we want to move to too. I've been hearing it. But I understand that they got people standing in his way where he want to move to. Somebody saying St. John is rat proof. So it is always good to hear what somebody has to say. But sometimes you learn more from what they do not say. And that was extremely interesting to me. You know, Mr. Speaker, this has been a very, very long road. When we first came to office, the previous administration had put all of their bets on what was called injection wells. Injection wells. And the minute that they did the injection wells and brought them online, within a day, they failed. They failed. And they put all their hopes on injection wells. We came to office and we met and we looked at all possibilities how to solve the problem. I remember clearly one particular meeting where the member for Christchurch East had posited that we were going to put a person into the pipe, to put a patch on that pipe. I was very concerned. I was very, very concerned. You could imagine putting a person in a pipe to make a repair because all else had failed. Remember, for Christchurch East is bolder than me. It was done, and we tried and tested it, and the patch failed. It was a hard day. We then said we can try it again. Put a man back in the pipe. A man went into the pipe, a 12-inch, 14-inch pipe, I think it is, 14-inch pipe, to try to get this problem solved. A problem where we had sewage on our streets and people from all over the world hearing about don't travel to Barbados because there were travel advisories against this country. People didn't understand this difficulty and the stress we were under. And the member for Christchurch, he says, no, we have to take the chance. Put a man in the pipe again. To put on the patch again. Put on the pressure, fail. We tried to attach it from the top, fail. So we came to one conclusion. The only way that we could solve this problem is to have a new outfall. An alternate route, not using that route, a different route altogether. I remember clearly the Prime Minister saying, you must have plan A, B, C, and D. We've gone to A, failed. We went to B, failed. We went to C, failed. We did not let up. We said, no, we are going to D. We put all things in place to put a new outfall there. We had the studies done by a company called Beard to make sure that we knew the exact distance we had to go. We did the designs of the size of piping. We knew how we were going to weight it down because it was going to be temporary. It was going to last for a period of time and then we replace it. We decided that we would put two. You heard the Prime Minister say that. An 8-inch and a 12-inch. We designed the weights, got the weights, bought the pipe, bought the couplings, got everything in place, got the consultants, and we executed, and it has worked ever since. And protected our country and our environment. You know, I heard the Honourable Member talk about sewage going into the sea. But the only time that sewage, raw sewage, went into the sea was under the Democratic Labour Party. We never put raw sewage in the sea. We put treated sewage in the sea. And we put treated because we put it at a distance that we knew it would not come back to the shore because we did the studies. I can remember clearly the color studies when we were given the presentation. I remember it as clear as day. And we don't only do that, we test benefit studies. We test that water constantly and consistently to make sure there's no issue coming back at all. We have been consistent and safe and secure. You know why? You know why we've been sure-footed? We've been sure-footed because of the number of failures in the past. And I must tell you, I take pity on the members from Barbados Water Authority. They have done fantastic work. But under the previous administration, they were under stress and trauma. Sometimes I think they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Because that's how they behave sometimes. The trauma and the stress of knowing that as you worked, you could not get a result. And you had an administration that was not supporting you, but left you out there to see. But we said, no, we're going to get in there and we're going to support you every step of the way. Week by week, 2 ministers, 3 ministers in there, helping and giving advice as best as we can. Helping and giving guidance on policy and reporting back to Cabinet every week so that everybody is abreast of what is happening. Those are the things that we had to do to make sure that we get this problem fixed. So I can now see light at the end of the pipe. I can now see light at the end of the pipe. Because we have the tenders gone out, we have shortlisted, we have had the environmental impact assessments. I understand that the firms, the final proposed submissions are due 1 week from today. 1 week from today. We have construction is expected to commence the second quarter of 2025. We have the funding. We have the land. We have the consultants to do the construction. And soon we will be able to commence. But we are absolutely sure-footed. And you would expect that we would be after the number of these issues that we've had across this. So this has been a long road. But what is interesting about this is that when we get this resolution passed, and we are not adding not 1 cent to the debt, you heard the Prime Minister, we are going to be getting a new sewage plant for the Delta. Why call the Delta? The difference between what a previous interest rate was and what the new interest rate will be. And we're getting the money up front. as you heard the Prime Minister say, up front to be able to build this new facility. And what is this facility going to do? First thing that this does is all of the effluent that comes in goes through an ultrafiltration process. From the ultrafiltration process at the current South Coast sewage plant, the effluent then moves to the new plant. At the new plant, you get a reverse osmosis process. From the reverse osmosis process, it then goes through ultraviolet light to be able to remove any bacterial content whatsoever. From there, it is then piped up to river. And what does that do at river? It allows water to be used for irrigation. Irrigation. But what does that do? What does that do? That does two things. It gives us the food security that we need, and it contributes to us having that food security. But more important, it is what we call water substitution. So it means that the water that's being used for irrigation now is now potable water. That was potable water before. That potable water becomes available for the rest of the population. You got to understand how this is working. So it means that the water that is being through reverse osmosis and then UV, that water goes to river. That water then is given to people for agriculture. That's people that are using potable water now. So they have less reliance on the potable water, and that makes that potable water available for the rest of the population. But on top of it, the additional benefit that you're going to get now, when we get to river, we're going to go along the train line. That train line is already government land. It didn't take us, Mr. Speaker, when people see this, sometimes when you do things, sometimes you do it so seamlessly, it makes it seem like it's easy. But getting to these stages and getting through these hurdles is not easy. It's just that we make it look easy, but it's not easy. So as you put the new pipe down the train line, when they put that road back in place, it means the additional benefit is the train line, and people get an opportunity to use the train line as well. So not only are you getting new replacement water, not only are you getting water for irrigation, but in addition, you're going to get a train line that will have the better use for the people to stay healthy and use it for bike riding and all sorts of things. All of these things we put in place because it is putting your head and everybody around the table to come to what the best solution is for the country and for everybody concerned. And that was the benefit of the South Coast Cabinet Subcommittee, bringing everybody, all the best minds together to find the best solution for the problem that we had. So I look forward to the day when we can get this South Coast sewage plant built. I look forward to the day. And I know that day we are at the crest of seeing that started and then seeing that completed, because it will be a benefit for this country. But the subcommittee didn't only deal with the South Coast. We also dealt with all the other wastewater issues across Barbados. You heard the Prime Minister talk about Bailey's Alley, Bellevue, Mr. Speaker, Bellevue, and the Bell, where we have decided the best solution is to sewer those areas, the ones in the St. Michael area, sewer those areas and transport the effluent to the Bridgetown sewage plant, which, by the way, is also getting an upgrade and a grant money, $40 million US. And by the way, this resolution is more grant money, another $40 million. I heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch South say it's nothing new, it's reinventing the wheel, it's easy. If it was easy, why did the Democratic Party didn't do it? If it was easy, why didn't the Democratic Labour Party do it? For 3 years. If the underground member could tell me why they didn't do it, I would say, no, and give you as to why they didn't do it, because it was easy. It was easy. It was done at all these other places, and it was very, very easy. But yet still, nobody in the Democratic Labour Party could get it done. Not one man. Not a group of men. None of them could get it done, but it was easy. It was easy. I posit it was not easy. It is not easy. Let me give you an example. Let me give you one simple example to show you how uneasy it is then. Anybody that's had any time in government knows what it is like to do a procurement with one multilateral development bank. Everybody has their procurement rules, their issues. You have to have the no objections come back for all sorts of things. Imagine doing an agreement with 3 simultaneously on one project. Imagine that. Imagine doing that kind of arrangement with 3, EIB, IDB, and GCF coming together. And all of their rules, and whether their rules coincide or don't coincide, and what you have to do, and what hurdles you have to jump over to make them all come together in one room. When was that ever done? When was that ever done? But it was easy. But the DLP couldn't get it done. But you know what? We are here today debating a resolution where the Barbados Labour Party has gotten it done. Six and a half years of work, and I take my hand off to the members of the Barbados Water Authority. And I didn't ask the members to call his name, but Dr. Mwanza, Brian Stewart, Mr. Eli, Keith Roy Halliday, who went through time and time again, meeting after meeting. Flores Vermillion, Alex Eiffel, meeting after meeting, meeting after meeting with one multilateral development bank, then a second, then a third, then bringing them all together and harmonizing all of their rules. That could be easy. And then on top of it, get a grant. A grant, what that means? That means money for the government that you don't have to pay back. A lot of people don't understand these words. Money that you don't have to pay. If somebody could tell me, when did the Democratic Labour Party get a grant for $40 million? When? When? Because it was easy. When? Nobody in living memory could think of when the Democratic Party got back for it. But you know what? That was the second grant. Because the first grant was the Trier crew for another $40 million US. So we're talking about $80 million US in grants done by the Barbados Labour Party and the Prime Minister of Barbados and the Ministry of Finance and the Barbados Water Authority working together to do something for the people of Barbados. When did the Democratic Labour Party get those kind of grants? Anybody? I give way. I give way. When did the Democratic Labour Party get a grant of $40 million US? When? Because it was easy. Well, it was not easy. It was not easy. 6.5 years, Mr. Speaker, of my life. Because I made sure the people of Christchurch West suffered more than anybody else in any other constituency. They suffered more. From Rendezvous all the way along to Hastings Police Station, with effluent coming up in the roadway. And I made it my business. I would not resile from the job. I made sure that we had a way forward. I can't go into everything. I can't go into all of the difficulties. I went into a few of the failures. But we had successes too. We had successes too. We were able to do things in the Graham Hall swamp to make things better. We had to fix the nature sanctuary that his administration polluted. We had to send in people in there to fix in there. We had to fix, and a lot of people don't understand, Graham Hall is 2 sections. One section is the private nature sanctuary. The other section is a set of tributaries maintained by the government of Barbados. We went in there and made sure that everything was back to normal, because it's a Ramsar site. It's the only Ramsar site in Barbados, a very, very important protected site. And we went in there and made wrong things right. Just as we do all the time. Make things that the Democratic Labour Party did wrong and make them right. That's what we do. But there's one other part that I want to deal with. The member for Christchurch, Essential, brought it up, and I want to talk about it. It has to do with the temporary outfall. He mentioned it a little bit, but I'm going to mention it a little bit more. So the temporary outfall, as I said earlier, is held down by weights. It is a 12-inch and an 8-inch. We knew, and every time a system is coming into our region, I am concerned and I am praying. Praying that nothing happened to the outfall. Every single time for the 4 years or whatever that it was there. Lo and behold, Beryl came by and one of the 2 got damaged. And we had to quickly go in. We recognized it was only one. We switched over from the 8-inch to the 12-inch. The 12-inch continued. The 8-inch had to be repaired. And we quickly went in and repaired it. I invited the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, when we were going through the discussions for the repair, to come and meet me down there. I'm still waiting. But the Honourable Member knew why. I guess, as I said, he's decided that he's no longer the Member of Parliament, or he will no longer be after the next election. The Member of Parliament, because so he don't mention or have anything to do with the constituents in Christchurch. So he's busy in St. John. But anyway, I can come a little bit to that. So right after we went in and do the repair, lo and behold, some humbug decided that the government got how much? $80 million loan to fix the outfall. And what will we do with the money? Some humbug. The same humbug that stopped you from going up in St. John. The same humbug. Some humbug decided that he went and read something from the Caribbean Development Bank website, and the government get $80 million. Well, let me make it pellucidly clear. We did not go forward on that. And you know why we didn't go forward? I'm going to explain to you why. When we decided that we were going to put the outfall there, a permanent outfall, we had the engineers come and give an assessment. The assessment was that it was going to cost, I think, $30 million or something like that. We said that is reasonable, 38 million US. We said that is reasonable. We started negotiations for the loan. Yes, we did. And CDB was prepared, and they said that yes, they're prepared to finance it, to be able to cover a new outfall at the Worthing area. When we actually went to tender, to get a contractor to actually do a new permanent outfall, the tenders come in at almost twice what we'd anticipated. And we said no. So we pulled back from that. We said no, because we have to do what is best and right for the people of Barbados. So that is why we never went forward on that loan. Because it could not be that we get one price and then somebody comes with a price double or double plus on what it could be to do it. So we said no. So we said, rather than do that, let us do an alternate route back to Hastings Police Station collection chamber. And that's what we're going through now, to do an alternate route. And why do you need an outfall if you're going to have a new tertiary treatment plant? Well, you need it for 2 reasons. You need it in case there's a problem. So it is a safety position. And all engineers and their worth their salt would tell you you must build in redundancies should there be a problem. I sit right next to a top-class engineer here, remember, for St. George South. And he would tell you all engineers build in fail-safes should there be a problem. That's number one. Number two, when you are doing reverse osmosis, for want of a better word, you have a sludge or a brine. You have to get that out as well. Again, another reason why you must have an outfall. And that's why we're working on an alternate route to be able to get to hit the collection chamber at Hastings Police Station. And we will build it. Because you know why? At least when a system is coming, we don't have to be on tender hooks. We don't have to be thinking, oh Lord, what will happen? Will the temporary outfall be damaged because we will have a permanent outfall? And we're going to strengthen the temporary outfall as well with new what we call manta stays on top of everything. It has not been an easy road. It has not been easy. But we are working to make sure that we get this done. So I want to be clear and pellucidly clear. So when people hear that, oh, the government had $80 million from the CDB and where it gone, did not happen. Did not happen. And I want that to go out. And it was surprising, you know, Mr. Speaker, I see all sorts of fake news. But oh, this happened and that happened and the third. And you know, it troubles me when fake news gets into normal, reliable media. People don't check anymore. People don't fact check. Because, you know, if they had fact check or called somebody at CDB, no, they don't do that. You hear something, put it in the media. Fake news. Fake news. So I want the Honourable Member for Christchurch South to understand, and I don't think there's any divide. I think that he wants what is best for Barbados. I think so. I would imagine he wants what is best for his constituents, or his former constituents. But I don't know if they're going to be his constituents again, but his former constituents. I think he wants what is best for them. I certainly want what is best for my constituents. I want what is best for my constituents who suffered under the inept ability of the Democratic Labour Party to solve a problem. And I am confident, and I am sure we have the location, we have the contractor, we have the designs, we have the money. All we need to do now is pull the trigger and execute. And that is where we are going. This Barbados that we love will benefit from this infrastructure. It will be a win-win-win-win-win. Because there's so many benefits that will accrue to us. And not 1 cent adding to the debt of the country. Not 1 cent. Because you're using the delta, the difference in interest rates. If you ask anybody, you know, and sometimes it is difficult for us to, as Prime Minister says, break it down, to explain in simple terms the things that we do so that the average person can understand it and then relate to it. And sometimes you have to miss out multiple steps to talk about the guarantee and how you have to do a guarantee to get the money up front rather than having to wait year by year for the money. All these things. To get 3 local banks to come together. What has another, I won't say, the Army Member for Christchurch talk about miracles. It's not a miracle. It's hard work. Hard work. To get 3 local banks to join together to be able to back the guarantee on this. All of those things. Everybody coming to the table to solve a problem that the Democratic Labour Party proved that they could not solve. But, Mr. Speaker, once this resolution passes, this Barbados Labour Party, and the collective minds of us working together constantly and consistently for 6.5 years to get this problem solved. It will be solved. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague who just spoke, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, because if there were two people who felt the pain of what we went through in 2018, the most and most acutely, it was myself and the member for Christchurch West. Sir, I was going, as is my custom, to address most of what was said by the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. But quite frankly, the Prime Minister dealt with him in a way that really doesn't require anything to come behind that to water it down. So I want to address his point number 4 and a comment that he made that if the Barbados Labour Party is proud to claim the ownership of sewage in Barbados. That was the exact wording. Are y'all proud and patting yourselves on the back to claim the ownership of sewage in Barbados? I think sometimes it's necessary just to clarify what somebody is saying. And well, we are not proud to own sewage in Barbados, sir. We are proud to own the fix for the sewage and the issues that we found in 2018. Sir, is at this point, I mean, the full story, this has never actually ever been told. Very few people know everything that happened in that point in time, but because we are now at the point of engaging in what the permanent solution was envisaged to be, it's perhaps opportune for me to enlighten other persons, the public, and most particularly the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I remember, sir, the day when the election results were announced, and as everybody does, they said, oh, you're waiting for a call. You're waiting for the Prime Minister to call you. You always hear the jokes about it, you're waiting for a call from the Prime Minister. And it's a real thing. I remember where I was sitting down drinking my coffee, as I do every morning. I was talking to my wife, and I got a phone call from the Prime Minister. And she said, Wilfred? I said, yes, PM. She goes, I guess you know why I'm calling you. I went through the motions, no, PM. And she said, Wilfred, I want you to be my Minister of Energy. And I started to laugh. And she goes, what's so funny? I said, Prime Minister, you have no idea how relieved I am. She goes, why? I said, because I was frightened that you were going to put me in charge of the Water Authority and the sewage. She goes, you didn't let me finish. I want you to be my Minister of Energy and Water Resources. At which point, sir, the laugh just choked up in my throat. And we had a conversation, we had a frank conversation, and she said, I see you as the person who can fix this, who can tackle the problem and fix it. I want the sewage off the streets of Barbados within the next 7 days. That's what she said. The sewage must be off the streets of Barbados within the next 7 days. And a fix started. Not planning, not tendering, not nothing. And the fix started within 28 days. That was the charge the Prime Minister gave me, sir. I knew nothing about water. I knew nothing about sewage. I knew nothing about engineering. I was one of the worst students at Arson College in chemistry. I know nothing about chemistry, biology. I was good at English and French and history and those sort of things. Sir, I had to completely immerse myself in a field that was as unfamiliar to me as any I've ever been in. But that's the difference between us on this side and he who sits on that side and his predecessors before him. Some of us end up in ministries that we weren't familiar with, but we did what we had to do. We made ourselves familiar. We did the work to understand what our task was, And then we did the follow-up work to complete the task assigned to us. And we took great pride, sir, in actually tackling head-on the major problems facing Barbados and doing it on behalf of the people who put their trust in us in 2018. Sir, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West spoke about the meetings we had every Monday. But sir, that was actually the full committee meeting. But we had meetings every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and multiple meetings. When we decided on what the immediate action should be, it was not a decision, a reckless decision on the part of a couple of people who didn't know. Every interest group in Barbados that had a role to play in this was at those Monday meetings. It was private persons, private engineers, the government engineering department, it was Ministry of Health, EPD, Coastal Zone Management, Water Authority. Everybody who had a thing to say or could contribute in there. Those meetings were big. They had about 30 people in them. Even when we started to do the fixes that the Honourable Member spoke about, it wasn't that people were just flowing and towing the line. EPD was representing their part of it. Ministry of Health was representing their part of it. The conservationists and the naturists were representing their part of it. Water Authority was giving us their advice. Tourism was giving us their issues. But what it allowed us to do, sir, which I don't think was done before, was to actually understand holistically, the magnitude of the problem that we were dealing with and how many people and sectors in Barbados were actually. It drains into the swamp. People don't know that. Anything you get flooding on that coast, when that water subsides, it subsides because it goes into Graham Hall Swamp. That's why periodically you have to raise the sluice gate to let the water levels, to let the water drain out and to regulate the water levels. I was not comfortable with us putting that amount of sewage in Graham Hall Swamp. We said, what is the other avenue? The scientists were saying you could empty it straight into the sea, channel it straight into the sea. I said, we can't be dumping the raw sewage straight into the sea. How can we purify it? What can be done? Then we got into the technical thing of how long it takes for flowing effluent exposed to UV to deactivate the bacteria and whatnot, and the pathogens in it. And then we went with excavators and we cut and designed, I would call it a snake. We had a large piece of land opposite, next to Graham Hall. We cut surf on the plant and we did out channels that went like this. Right? It zigzag, zigzag, zigzag to allow the waste being released to have sufficient time to pass through all those channels to get the maximum exposure to UV light to make it possible to put it out to the sea. That's what we had to do. While we were doing that, sir, we were attempting to fix on the pipe. Because, sir, to actually even attempt to fix the pipe, you had to cut that pipe completely. You had to close off that pipe. We sent balloons down there. We call them balloons. There's another name, not bungs, there's another name for them. Bladders. Where you insert it in and inflate it to block things from going on in there. We had to block them all so people could go up. So we could send cameras down. We did that while trying to figure out exactly what to do with the sewage, while trying to start the design, because we knew if this didn't work, we had to start putting something, building outfall as close as possible. We pulled up the water flow things. We dealt with the consultants who would map the tidal flows off of Barbados to find out if you put something right here in Graham Hall, where does it go? Who does it affect? If you put it half a mile out, who does it affect? If you put it a mile out, who does it affect? If it is at 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, who does it affect? All of this was going on at the exact same time. Exact same time, sir. Exact same time. And what we did why we got such support from the public of Barbados. We decided as a cabinet up front that we had to let the people of Barbados know at every stage what was going on. The public of Barbados got a press conference from us, a statement from us at least twice a week in this. Every time we tried something new, we let them know we were trying it. If it didn't work, we let them know it didn't work and what we're trying next. That was facing a problem that we did not create, and including the whole of Barbados in the information cycle on its fix. Sir, after a certain point in time, we said it would be good if we could get the current outfall fixed. But even if we get that fixed, we now still need to create a backup. So let us go with the temporary outfall. Before we could do that, we had to be certain where we were putting it would be something that everybody can live with. It cannot come back to the near shore. That's the issue. That's the major issue. This must not come back to the near shore. We did all sorts of tests. We put dye in the water. We put all sorts of, and we did it over a period of 6 months. So even, sir, to the point where to construct a temporary outfall, where it took a while, we had trouble getting the pipes in. We eventually had to airlift a lot of those pipes to get them in urgently and use the diplomatic connections to get it done. I think the US Air Force brought in some of the pipes for us. But sir, we couldn't wait until we were certain where it would go. Where it would go. So we did all the acts preparatory. We had the design for it. We had the anchors being built. We had all them things being designed. We had a barge commissioned to do it. We had the engineers on standby, whatnot. Then, sir, we found out the depth we had to go to. We had to measure and cut core through the reef to actually get the requisite depth. All this time, remember, sir, we are still trying to fix the other one. We had multiple efforts to fix it. It didn't work. Then time came, we were satisfied, we knew where the follow-up would go, and we set about doing it. But the decision was taken by the cabinet. I remember the meeting. The decision was taken by the cabinet. Don't let's put down one. Let us put down two. Because if we put down one, we still have the exact same issue. If something happens to that one, then what? By this time, sir, the sewage is doing its treatment, and we are periodically notifying the public that we can have a release from Graham Hall, right? And we release it every so often, close off the beach for a requisite amount of time. I think it was 18 hours or something, so before the tide remove all traces. I mean, the science down, sir, this was no ad hoc anything. This was pure science with all of the persons involved, and that water was being tested morning and afternoon. Every day, morning and night, that water was being tested. So when we eventually managed to complete and commission the outfall, it worked even better than we expected, sir. We had the specs initially to design the outfall, that the outfall could last maybe a year or two. We said all those are temporary, we're not even playing with this. So rather than, for simplicity, rather than grade C or grade B pipes, we went for grade A. Rather than a 2-ton anchor block, we went for a 5-ton anchor block. We did the best that we could all the while, and all the discussions were happening that we need to move away from this. We only having this problem because our solutions to discharge into the sea. That's what we're doing. From the get-go, we all knew that the ideal situation for us was to have a tertiary treatment plant, that we could have options as to what to do with the water. But with the best will in the world, if it was the fastest design project in the world, it could not be done in time to arrest and address the issue that we had at that point in time. An immediate solution had to be found. I am happy to say, sir, that the solution that was found served Barbados well with no issues. We kept hearing people saying the pipes can flow away, they can break. With the slightest storm, we in trouble. That went through, sir, everything. We had extraordinary swells. We had swells like never before in the history of Barbados with Hurricane Beryl. Hitherto unseen swells. When the wall of the port was built, they said that, and it was designed, they said that swells will never crest that. That was the unbreachable wall. When the fisheries complex was designed and the breakwaters were done, boats sheltered in there for every storm since 35 years that remained unassailable. Beryl, sir, was a situation that we had never contemplated. That was one for the history books, the worst swells ever in Barbados. Half the west coast get washed away. Fisheries destroyed. 90% of the boats damaged. Boats sank in the harbor. And you know what? Yeah, we had a break on one of the pipes, but the other one held strong. The other one held strong. So our temporary engineering withstood for the most part the worst swells in the history of Barbados. We had a break in one of the pipes, and we got that fixed. That was fixed within a couple of days, within days. Because when we ordered the pipe, we also said, in the event that something happened, we had to have standby pipes. And those pipes, they used to be on Worthing Beach. Those pipes were moved about 2 years ago to a secure location, because in the event of a hurricane, we didn't want the same pipes washing out to sea. So those pipes were stored and protected almost like a human being.
Pipes, weights, and connections.
So when the breach happened, sir, in 0 time flat, the fix was on its way. So do we own sewage? No, we don't own sewage. We own the fix. Sir, the other issue I had, because my friend from Christchurch South was harping about, we've gone past that. I use the word friend loosely. We've moved past that people forget about that. You can't forget about the greatest threat to the tourism industry of Barbados we've ever had. You can't forget, sir, the greatest threat to the South Coast we've ever had. And it wasn't just that, because we said, you know, while we're dealing with South Coast, let's make sure we have a problem with Bridgetown. And we then, sir, went and scoped the Bridgetown sewage, and we realized, sir, that the blockage in Bridgetown, the sewage was about to come up through the streets in Bridgetown too. Those drains and the sewage pipes in Bridgetown were not flushed. They had not been maintained for years. Bridgetown was about to collapse. Bridgetown had 2 processing tanks. Everybody knows the story about, we went and saw tank number 1. But sir, when I went there, I went and looked over the tank. That was the biggest shot of my life. If anybody has seen that movie, Jumanji, so that's what it looked like. I expect to see apes and chimpanzees swinging from down in there. I could not believe the whole of Bridgetown, after Gabby sang his whole song, the whole of Bridgetown and its environs being serviced by this one sewage plant, which had 2 tanks. And somebody thought it was okay to have one of those tanks entirely out of commission. If the other one failed, then what? So while we were dealing with the South Coast, we were also dealing with the Bridgetown answer, and that wasn't as hard a fix. That was simply a matter of political will. Somebody saying it has to be done, do it. And it was done. We perhaps made it look too easy, sir. We made it look too easy. I heard the comments from George Street that the minister at the time didn't do nothing. He came in there, a plan was already in effect. So when the government came in, the plan just continued and the thing was fixed. Hogwash. The greatest failing, well, I can't even say the greatest failing because there's so many, sir, it'd be impossible to accurately balance. one of the greatest failings of that administration was inertia and inactivity and a lack of responsibility. Barbados has been too forgiving on them, and maybe we have not hammered them enough on it. Maybe we have not hammered them in sufficient details that people can understand, but sir, we are that government that says face it, fix it, and move on. Face it, fix it, and move on. We're not dwelling in the past. We did what we had to do, we fixed it, and we moved on. We did a temporary outfall when a temporary outfall was necessary. Now we move on to what we actually want, a tertiary treatment plant. So I find it a little bit offensive, sir, when the honourable member came to address or to respond to the presentation by the minister. The minister who came justifiably proud of himself, justifiably, that he effectively found money. He found a way to take what we had to pay and make that stretch. To take what we had to pay and add on to the benefit, so that we pay the same amount but got almost twice the benefit. Now, sir, if that is not something to be proud of, I don't know what is. And if perhaps the last set of people who occupied the seat of government had half of the initiative, half of the foresight, half of the follow-through, we would never have found ourselves in the position we were in 2018. Never. So, I know it is not in his interest to acknowledge the good work that the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance is doing. I know it is not in the interest of the member for Christchurch South to do that. And I know the Honourable Minister can't pat himself on the back, but he deserves every accolade that we can give him. Every accolade that we can give him. It wasn't just sewage. In 2018, we were at the bottom of the financial ladder. We were the third most indebted country in the world behind Greece and somebody else. Right? Per capita. The third most indebted, holding that position that Haiti was above us. Everybody we look at and think that is the economy in struggling, as a country in crisis, they were all above us. He talks about us borrowing money and increasing our debt when we actually not increasing our debt, but they couldn't borrow. People are lending us on the most favorable terms. People are falling over themselves to lend Barbados money. They could not even borrow, sir. Nor get a grant. They couldn't get an overdraft, sir, to get an extra box of Kentucky or Chafet. That was the real position that we found ourselves in. Let us be real. Everything in Barbados was falling apart. It is in his best interest to forget that and beg Barbadians to move on. But he raised it in here. Everything was falling apart. He talking about some people didn't get garbage collection for the last couple of weeks. People weren't getting garbage collection for months. We have some trucks now, but we have trucks. We had no buses. No buses, sir. The economy has stalled completely. People forget our fear was that the dollar was going to devalue. We've come so far that people forget when we took over from his party, the dollar was about to be devalued. That was the real fear. The first cabinet meeting we had, the very first one, the Prime Minister said, we need to address something now. I don't know if the other members can remember this. We need to address something now. Who believes we have to do everything to stop the dollar from devaluing? She explained if the dollar devalued what that would mean. She explained what the other side was. And cabinet had to make a decision. We had to call it, because once we picked that route, everything else was determined by that decision. And the decision to a man in cabinet, everything, whatever we had to do to keep the 2-to-1 peg to the US dollar, we were going to do. So we have not just done that and kept it, but our dollar is now so secure. We have reserves, grandmother. We have reserves that we never contemplated. When we took over, there was no contemplation. We would get to this position where the dollar was so safe. But the other side wants you to forget that, because it is not in their interest that you remember. Are we better off than we were in 2018? Hell yes! Only a mad person would ask that question. Sir, I am proud to be a part of this government. I believe in Barbados, and I believe in Barbadians. This new sewage treatment plant, sir, is the next step to where we want to be. And just for the record, the direct question was asked, are we releasing sewage into the sea? We are treating sewage the same way that we've treated sewage for the time the first sewage treatment plant was developed. We take it out, do basic treatment, and then we send it out to sea. That's the reality. We accept we need to move away from that. Ain't that we chose that? It's not that this government chose that. The last government had it, and the government before had it, and the government before that had it. We have said this is no longer the way. It is acceptable. It is acceptable. But this is no longer the way. We can do better. And our role as a country should not be to plod on by and toe the minimal line of acceptance for third world countries. Our role as a country is to try to do the best for Barbados and the best for Barbadians, infrastructurally, technologically, all the measures and metrics of advancement. We are supposed to be asking for the best for Barbados, and that is what we are doing. So for somebody to use their position in here to spout fear, to grab desperately for a headline, to keep repeating themselves in the hope that the media picks up on the one thing they're saying and it creates some anxiety and fear in the country, so that people are so blinded by fear that they don't actually look to the frailties of the fearmonger. That is his method. He talked about Goebbels. I even know him as Joseph Goebbels, right? As probably the rest of the world knows as Joseph Goebbels. But he wants to talk about propaganda. Sorry, sir, the Honourable Member wants to talk about, he objects to calling people he in here. Don't mind the Honourable Member referred to the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, sir, over and over as he, him, he. Sir, that propaganda assumes that Beijing's still paying for education and can't afford it and don't go. The reality, we have done way more in the last 6 years than any other government in a 6-year span has ever done. We've probably done way more, sir, in the last 6 years than if you add up all the time the DLP was in office from the time of independence. We have done more in the last 6 years than they've done in that time. So, are we proud of it? We have every reason to be. But, sir, it's not our pride that stops us from working. We are glad to see where we have gotten, but we see so much more in store for Barbados, so much more in store for Barbadians. And I believe, sir, that all the other, I can't include you in this, sir, because you're impartial in this house, but the other 28 of us who occupy these seats, I think really want to see Barbados succeed and succeed against the odds. And in doing that, sir, we must open ourselves to all the avenues of advancement that are available to us. We must find every opportunity to make the most of our situation. Like when you run a household, sir, you look for every opportunity to cut and save, and reapply monies. The aim is to try to make the most of the budget that you have, the fixed amount you have. And this resolution, sir, allows us to do that. It allows us to add on and add on and add on without actually increasing what it is that we owe. At the end of the day, we're getting way more bang for the buck than we were before the terms of this resolution were negotiated. So, in saying all of that, do we own sewage in Barbados, sir? No. I think the dams own sewage in Barbados. The dams cultivated it. The dams propagated it. The dams flooded the streets of it with it. The dams continue to spout it. The dams swam in it. I think, sir, the ownership of sewage and sewage-related things in Barbados belongs to the dams. But, however, sir, I will proudly say that we own the fix. And having said that, sir, I entirely support this resolution. Thank you.
Honourable Member Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I intend to be fairly brief this afternoon, but I did want to weigh in on the conversation, having been a Minister of Blue Economy at a time when we began the conversation around the debt swap. Not the debt for climate swap, the debt for nation swap. Mr. Speaker, I must also say that I was driving in my car coming to this honourable place, and I listened to the leader of the opposition. And I remembered a few years ago, while there was a live report in Tampa, the police were reporting on something that had happened. There was a lady who came in and she convinced them somehow that she knew sign language and that she could use sign language and communicate with people who could not hear. And of course, this lady turned out to be a fake, but anyone who understood sign language knew she was a fake. Made absolutely no connection whatsoever with what was being said. And as leader of the opposition spoke, I just kept remembering this lady, because he too made no connection whatsoever with anything that was in the resolution, and convinced me, therefore, that the most legitimate word that we could use to describe him and that presentation today was also fake. And in fact, in the comments, somebody said that the lady was talking in Klingon. So what we got today was a presentation in Klingon. That's a language, sir, that the Star Trekkies would understand. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, sir, there was no relationship between the resolution and what the leader of the opposition presented. And I would wish today, sir, because I took my role in Blue Economy very seriously. And I remember my initial conversations with the fisher folk. I remember my initial conversations with the vendors. I remember the initial conversations with the people who also put me in this place, the great people in St. Michael South. And I told them that we would go to work on their behalf every single day. And what would happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that in our conversations, you don't believe the opposition was there too, when we started planning what we would put into the manifesto, we had spent a long time looking. If you look at the manifesto for 2018, about the blue economy, we talked about a debt swap in the manifesto, Mr. Speaker, sir, so that we understood how a debt swap was supposed to work, how it was supposed to work. And I want to locate this conversation, Mr. Speaker, sir, within the context of what is really happening. Many small island developing states and developing countries are being told now that they have to develop innovative financing mechanisms because the existing financial architecture of the world does not suit small island states. And if you look at what was presented over time for many small island states, sir, it was nothing that would allow them to benefit in a way, sir, that was favorable to them. When we came into office and we started the conversation on the original debt for nation swap, the debt swap that was done in Seychelles, I won't talk about the one in Bolivia, but the one that was done in Seychelles, because up to ours in 2022, up to then, Seychelles was seen as the gold standard in a debt swap. But the debt swap that was done, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the premise of a debt swap is that a country's financial position normally is so bad that the creditors would almost take anything to get out of the deal. So that it was anticipated that for every dollar that Barbados owed, people would take 80 cents, 70 cents, as they did in Seychelles. When the government came in, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I feel that this is an important conversation. I will use this opportunity today to help educate the leader of the opposition. When we came into office, Mr. Speaker, sir, the government of the day performed so exceedingly well. The way they went about managing the finances, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Prime Minister and the then two ministers in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. The Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central and the Honourable Member for St. Michael East Central. Christchurch Central, I apologize. Christchurch East Central. The work that was done in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Speaker, sir, put Barbados in a position that had never been seen before. Never been seen before, to the extent, Mr. Speaker, sir, when people anticipated originally, because when the Democratic Labour Party was in, remember we had so many downgrades, our debt was worth pretty much nothing. When they performed so well that on most days, and you could check the history, I am not lying, on most days our debt was trading at par or above par on some days. So what that meant was that instead of having a situation where a person would take 70 cents instead of the dollar that they owed, people who had debt, Barbados debt, said, you got to pay me my dollar, because I know at some point this country, the way they're looking now under the leadership of the Barbados Labour Party and Honourable Prime Minister, I know that they will be able to repay at $1 for every single dollar. So at the end of the day, the debt swap that was originally a planned debt swap that was supposed to give about, we anticipated about 30 cents, and that 30 cents in savings would be used in the marine space. It never materialized. So for the opposition leader to compare our debt swap to the debt swap in Bolivia, first of all, is, but even if you were to compare it to the one in Seychelles, which was the gold standard, we could not have, it was not the same thing. Because we then had to do innovative financing mechanisms. Sir, what do I mean by that? First of all, the debt swap in Seychelles was for 21.6 million, I think, US dollars. Our swap was for $150 million to start, Mr. Speaker, sir. You're not comparing apples and apples. I mean, the one that was referenced by the opposition leader was $650,000. Ours was $150 million, the original debt financial swap. So you're not comparing apples and apples. And at the time, when we finished the swap, the debt that was being, Barbados' debt had an interest rate of about 7-point-something%. When we did the arrangements, it came down to 4-point-something%. So you began saving immediately on interest, Mr. Speaker, sir. So that, again, it was a situation where you used the debt that you had innovatively and was then able to re-enter the market in a way that brought down the country's overall debt without increasing anything. The principle here is the same. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, and these are important conversations, furthermore, we then had to enter into an agreement, because remember, sir, I said that they anticipated when we came in that Barbados would be so badly off that the people would take anything to get rid of Barbados' debt, but they had not expected the performance of the government. So people began to hold on to it. So the way that a debt swap was supposed to work could not work for Barbados. So it meant then that we had to try new things. And sir, these were conversations over and over, into the night, into the morning. Long conversations to be able to make sure we put ourselves in a position where we would be able to present something to the people of Barbados that made sense. And what Barbados did was an innovative finance mechanism. Sir, because of the condition of our debt at the time when we came in, we then had to make an arrangement, sir. We entered an arrangement with TNC, the Nature Conservancy, and the IDB. And at the time, Mr. Speaker, sir, we used the leverage of the IDB and the TNC ratings to lower costs of financing and provide better terms and conditions, because ours wasn't good enough. What we found in 2018 was not good enough. And in our relationship with TNC and the IDB, we used them, they had AAA rating, to then lower the costs. And people then started to buy into our program. That, sir, freed up $50 million for the marine space, sir. $50 million without costing the taxpayers of Barbados a single cent. Mr. Speaker, sir, a lot of it in interest savings. And then the other thing that was created as part of that, sir, because the idea wasn't to get this money and use it willy-nilly, you then created a Barbados Environmental Sustainability Fund that was supposed to manage these resources that come in, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the marine space. Again, using those resources in a way that would benefit persons, sir, in that sector. The same fishermen that the member for Christchurch South comes in here and discusses from time to time. The same persons, sir, who were looking after the coral and so on. That is what that money was for. So what we created at the time in the debt financial swap was not the same swap that Seychelles had, and that there are now case studies on Barbados' debt for nature swap. Barbados now has the gold standard for a debt for nature swap. And at that time, I thought there was no way possible that Barbados could outdo itself. But along comes this debt for climate swap, which has by far now even more in it for the people of Barbados than the debt for nature swap, which has a lot of good things in store for the people of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Prime Minister said earlier that she was looking at a debt for social swap. I'm looking forward to that, because if you could use innovative financing mechanisms to help people, sir, at the end of the day, sir, that is what we came in here to do. And I listened to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, sir, and, when we started this debt for nation swap conversation, Mr. Speaker, sir, it meant a lot of conversations with the fisher folk, talking about some of the same things that came to visit us, unfortunately, about the need for them to make their boats climate resilient, the need for us to have a climate resilient breakwater. But that particular swap was only for the marine space, Mr. Speaker, sir. But at the end of the day, Barbados has a problem, and that no government should come to this place and think that fixing one of the biggest problems in terms of our sewage, sir, is beneath us. We made that promise to the people, and that is what we are intended to do. We made that promise to the people, Mr. Speaker, sir. And my constituents who reside on Bay Street can still remember, sir, how the smell came all the way down to the average persons who reside still out there, Mr. Speaker, sir. And so if it is the principle of the swap that is causing the misunderstanding, because I genuinely believe that the Leader of the Opposition misunderstands. If it is the underappreciation, perhaps, for how a swap works, then none of us on this side, I think, is opposed to spending a few minutes and explaining how it works. If it is, at the end of the day, that this is some intent, sir, to mislead the people of Barbados, well, that is an unfortunate reality. Because when the debt for social swap comes, sir, I suspect that the same nonsensical argument that was made today will be made in relation to that, because the principle of it is not understood. And the principle of the debt for nation swap, Mr. Speaker, sir, is about reassigning. The principle of the debt for climate swap is the same thing, but with a lot more in it for the people, Mr. Speaker, sir. And if we are privileged enough to have another debt swap, the same principle applies, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I do not believe that this is an attempt to mislead. Then it would be the misleader of the opposition. But I believe that at the end of the day, it's about lacking understanding. So I have explained, sir, the principles of a debt swap. The principles of a debt swap. And the idea about who goes first and who goes last. But there's a deeper, more philosophical, and I will close on this point, Mr. Speaker, I wasn't planning to be long. But there is a deeper, more philosophical understanding that people who attempt to hold high office in Caribbean societies and Caribbean states have to understand. And that is, sir, that this the international financial services sector was not created for us. And a lot of this talk about innovative financing mechanisms, sir, and finding new ways is actually, sir, meant for us to go out now and do work. And when the Bridgetown initiative came, for example, sir, you know, when I read some of the comments on the Bridgetown initiative, it was almost to me telling about the people who were saying some things. Some person in the developed world was surprised. They were surprised that Barbados and the Caribbean could have solutions to the problems. You read the literature. It is the most amazing thing. They were surprised that Barbados, a small island state of 280,000 people, could have such solutions. They're surprised that Barbados could bring such innovative mechanisms to the international space, sir. And why is that? Because that is the way they see us, sir. Still, many of them. And any person in my mind, so there are some things I believe on which we must not have a political divide. And this is one. Because at the end of the day, this is a fight between developing countries, in many cases, and the developed world. It is the same fight, sir, the same feeling I had when after Hurricane Maria, quick thereafter, we saw Dominica get blacklisted. Because some institutions don't see those things. So when you have prime ministers in the region, the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, making cases for climate, for any person who lives in a climate-affected country such as Barbados is, and any person who is attempting to lead, they must know what side they fall on. And if you're going to reject something that is as so beneficial to the people of Barbados, but, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I have always said at the end of the day, it is not so much what, permit me to say, sir, Errol Barra, sir, or Tom Adams, or any of our former leaders did. It is the way they thought about the world. Because if we were to find a way miraculously to breathe life back into them and put them into this space, sir, they wouldn't understand this world. But they would think differently about the world. It's how we think about the world. Friends of all, and satellites of none. What do you think this is, sir? At the end of the day, that we have now to sit down and develop innovative financing mechanisms, sir, that seize the imagination of the entire world, sir. And that some of us will come to this place and oppose it for opposing its sake in the hope that it gives some political value. It's a shame. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support this resolution, sir. I commend it to the ordinary people of this country, sir, because every dollar that does not have to be spent on this allows us, sir, to build elderly facilities that we are now about to build. It allows us to build facilities for the disabled that we are now about to build. It allows us to build facilities for children, sir, to keep them safe, sir, that we are now about to build. It allows us to buy assistive devices, sir, that we are also now buying. More vehicles for persons with disabilities. That is what you do when you have extra, sir. That is what it is at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, sir, and that is the vision. That is the vision. And I fear that any person who does not align with that kind of vision, sir, perhaps needs to reconsider any aspiration for leadership. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, sir, this conversation is a conversation between those who have taken advantage of small island states and the capacity of small island states to be able to chart their own future, Mr. Speaker, sir. We have to understand it within that philosophical context. And those of us who do not understand it within that philosophical context, well, we need to have further conversation. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, on behalf of the good people of St. Michael South and the vulnerable and all those other persons who allow me to be here, sir, I wholeheartedly commend this resolution to the people, sir, and give it my fullest support. Thank you.
Honourable for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I just want to rise in support of this very important resolution. But first, for 3 years, the South Coast area, that was heavily invested in fecal matter on the streets. There are much happier and in a better place, especially those who reside in that area, those who work in the hotels in that area, those who taught at the primary school in that area, the policemen who had to endure the stench, who had to traverse, whether by foot or in vehicle, the area that was polluted, heavily so, by fecal matter. Persons like myself, who had at some point in time to traverse the area, I think those men today are happier. I think those men today feel a sense of entitlement under this administration, because they're no longer, after 3 years of enduring the putrid smell and discomfort and the threat to health with traversing the South Coast area, I think those men today are in a better place, and I know they'll be able to share the moment of International Men's Day with all of us in here as we heap praises on them. I want to say that this government has gone about its busy business to ensure that we have a new deal for Barbadians and a better deal. We have gone about our busy business, and the Member of Parliament for Christchurch East spoke lucidly about his mandate given even at the onset of his sojourn as minister back then, where he was told in a matter of weeks, face it and fix it. I am sure, Mr. Speaker, sir, with that mandate, he used all the sinew within his being to ensure that what we see on the streets today, that this is now the new reality for Barbadians who traverse the area. And further to that, to ensure that the trip advisories that we were getting before, trip advisory after trip advisory, which seek to triple the economy, the socio-economic fabric of this country, travel advisory. We were exposed to downgrades. We were exposed to all types of variables and idiosyncrasies because of the travesty, and I will call it that was exposed to us in the South Coast. And what did we do? We said as a government that we must fix it. And that is exactly what the Member of Parliament and his team for Christchurch East sought to do, and that is what he did. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we are now going a step further with this new resolution, where we are unlocking to the tune of 120 million US dollars, where we can look with a debt for nature, new innovative mechanism, where we can now look to have a tertiary facility so that persons now not only could feel a sense of comfort, but allow for Barbados, which is recognized as the 15th most water scarce country, to be able to have water, millions of gallons being channeled to the river and plantation area so that we can have the survival of the agriculture industry. That, Mr. Speaker, is noble. That is innovative. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the new deal for Barbadians. And coming prior to that, Mr. Speaker, you would have heard about the debt for climate swap, which was articulated just now by the Member of Parliament who spoke before me. And limpidly so as well, where he was able to explain in detail from the inception to the realization of that debt for nature swap, where we would allot $50 million for marine conservation, starting with a marine spatial plan, which will seek to demarcate the ocean or blue space in a special way so we can have sustainable development and achieve our sustainable development goal, which seeks to look at life in the ocean space, where you've got areas in the ocean that will be earmarked for recreational purposes, areas earmarked for the conservation, areas earmarked for artisanal fishery, areas earmarked for mariculture, areas earmarked for reef and coral restoration, shipping, areas earmarked for energy resource from the natural environment. So the whole ocean in itself, as the hydrosphere as we know it, could be utilized for its full potential. And that is what we said we will do first of over a 15-year period with the $50 million. And of course, I could not stand here unless I expose the fact that our biological diversity would also be enhanced. Because we have said, as a government, when I brought the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan to this August chamber, that we will by land be able in the next 20 years, not because we are acquiescing to a United Nations General Assembly call, but it must be a Barbadian call, because the life on Earth as we know it cannot exist unless we have the enhancement of biodiversity. And we say 70% by land, another 30% by the ocean. So the Marine Spatial Plan will have areas set about where we will do just that in terms of enhancing our biodiversity. And then of course, before that, another deal, the Bridgetown Initiative, where we look at disrupting that which was the normal architecture in terms of finance, so that small island developing state, because it not only benefits Barbados, it is a benefit for all these islands recognized as small islands, like ourselves, where previously we would be exposed to loans at 15, 16, sometimes higher than that in terms of percentage. And we say that this is not fair. So it was an appeal to the international community, the multilateral banks, using a new architecture, a new structure, with special vehicles for us to be able to access loans at concessionary rates. The New Deal. And that's what we said. The reality is that we have to move now from a linear economy to that which is circular. And I want to say that in the whole context of water. Because we must be able to use every single drop, H2O as we know it. And that's why we say that the Roof to Reef project must encapsulate this whole idea and this whole concept, where we move from every single drop, whether it is from sewage or wherever, and then we put it back in a recycled way into a circular stream. That is what we said. It is part of the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which looks at responsible consumption and production. And of course, at the core of that Sustainable Development Goal is the fact that you must use those persons who are most vulnerable to bring them along as part of the conversation. That is what we said as a government. So, Mr. Speaker, our efforts are the efforts of a vision that seeks to ensure that Barbados can survive the test of times. It seeks to ensure that the sustainable goals as we know them must not be on the wish list alone, but there must be a tangible existence in the breathing space of Barbadians. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this transaction, this resolution, will in fact ensure not only for aquifer recharge, but along with that, as I just mentioned, the Roof to Reef project. It will ensure that the resilience plan that is articulated in our NDCs, aligned with our Paris Agreement, that plan is maintained and survives the test of times as well. That is what it ensures. So it's a holistic appreciation of what we must do in order to stay resilient, how we must build forward better. That type of conversation, Mr. Speaker, sir, imbues itself in this type of resolution. And I want to say that if we are serious about our sustainable development goals, if we are serious about our mandate to ensure that we are able to build resilience, which is mitigation and adaptation, then we must be able to have before us these types of deals, these types of operations, these types of new provisions as it relates to how we deal with our debt. And I'm happy that the Minister, the Member of Parliament for Christchurch East, that he has worked with sweat expenditure to ensure that this becomes a reality. Mr. Speaker, sir, along with water, you would have heard about sanitation. I just want to date our minds back prior to 2018 and to say to Barbadians, because the workers at SSA, the good workers, and I want to say today that I want to thank them. It is no secret in Barbados that we are having some challenges. And Mr. Speaker, I would not hide my red flag today to say that there aren't. There are some challenges. And we are working assiduously to address them. But just to go back prior to 2018, we had 12 garbage trucks. I want persons to hear me in Barbados. I'm not making excuses because, as I said, we will fix the problems. And I will speak about the fix shortly. We had 12 garbage trucks. The workers will often refer to them as the dirty dozen. And I would always get my mind back to the Stockholm Convention, because it was back then when that convention looked at the persistent organic pollutants that they were called the dirty dozen. The workers at Sanitation called them the dirty dozen. The 12 trucks that we had, we were paying, Mr. Speaker, sir, $350,000 plus every month to the private waste haulers so that we can get our garbage collected. Not one truck was bought during that period of time. Not one. Persons tell me I shouldn't refer to it as the lost decade. Well, it may be referred to as the last decade. Not one garbage truck was bought. Not one. And these are trucks that are sometimes 18, 20, 25 years old trucks. You know that. And the new era we live in, by the time a vehicle becomes 3 years old, we are willing to change them. These are trucks that were 18, 20, and 25 years old. Since then, since 2018, and I want to salute the Member of Parliament who held the ministry before me, who was at the driving seat of this discussion, the Member of Parliament for St. Michael East. We have bought, and I want to be very, very limpid this evening, we have bought 26 compactor trucks, 26, 2 skid trucks, 2 skip trucks, 2 skid steers, 1 dumper, 2 10-wheelers, 1 response truck, 1 D9, 1 Bomag compactor, which is being used at the landfill since 2018. That is 37 pieces of equipment bought. 37. I want to say today, Mr. Speaker, as I said, I would be first to apologize to Barbadians, those who are having problems in terms of the collection. We have had our challenges mechanically and other ways, but I want to say, before the holiday period, before the day that everybody wants to celebrate as the Christmas day, because I bring today good tidings of great joy to Barbadians. And to just say that before that day comes, this country will see, and that's when we open up with these new types of arrangements, we will see 17 more compacted trucks, 2 skip trucks, and 2 open trucks, which will be here in short order to be able to help with the garbage situation in this country. And I want to say, as I said before, to thank those good men and women. Those good men and women, because the women work at Sanitation too. We have women at the back of the trucks as well. And I want to say to them, I want to thank them for staying the course and having faith in this government. And of course, because at the end of the day, we live in this little island called Barbados, and all of us must be able to do our little part. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say that there was a problem. We recognize that there is a problem, and we decided to put measures in place to fix that problem. And I want to give Barbadians the calm assurance that we will do everything in our power to rectify that which is a concern to many of them. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say that this government will continue recognizing, of course, the vagaries that we are faced with. It has been a challenge. It has been a challenge from the climate change perspective. We have seen the effects of Hurricane Beryl. Never before we had a hurricane in late June, early July. National Hurricane Center, which has been tracking hurricanes for the last 10, 15 years, said it has never happened before. And in the not too distant future, Mr. Speaker, based on what the trajectory is saying, that we may have other situations, whether it's hurricanes, tsunami effects, whatever. This is the world that we live in. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we will do our part in terms of building up the resilience. We will continue to educate Barbadians. We will continue to ensure that we enter arrangements that will benefit Barbadians, saving the dollar, along with ensuring that the interest rates that we get and the deals that we get are the best for Barbados in the current time. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we have worked with extended expenditure to ensure that Barbadians are able to put food on their table, that the socio-economic situation is one where we can feel comfortable as a nation. We are comfortable, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in the whole scope of things from the international perspective, that Barbados is shining like the little diamond that we know that it is. And we will continue, Mr. Speaker, to work assiduously on behalf of the citizens of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate those persons who work hard in the Ministry of Finance. It may not be what we call a sexy ministry by any stretch of imagination, but it's because of their hard work that we are able to do the things that we do. So for me, there are the silent heroes. And Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the Member of Parliament for Christchurch East and his entire team, and to say to you that for Christchurch East Central, for Christchurch East Local, you started the work in terms of making sure that we remove that sewage, that putrid distress in the southwest area, and the Member of Parliament for Christchurch East Central, of course, for his hard work. I want to unequivocally, in a very unbridled way, support this resolution. Thank you.
Honourable from Microsoft Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this resolution and to lend my voice to this debate, in many ways to support some things that have already been said, but if I might, to also put this area and this conversation in context with respect to the many development issues that we face. This discussion, this debate, sir, is not simply one about water and sanitation infrastructure. It is not simply one about debt and the levels of debt that can be tolerated by a developing country. It is a debate, sir, ultimately about how we manage development in a country of this size, in a country that is enduring with the rest of the world a poly-crisis, a crisis of climate and environment, a crisis of population, in many respects, a crisis of democracy and democratic governance, a crisis of peace and tolerance. And all these things, from this honorable place, from this small island, we have to navigate every day. These are not esoteric issues, Mr. Speaker. This is not academic. This is not about numbers. This is not about big words. This is about how do we provide day by day by day for the people of this country. But not only that, how do we finally demonstrate that moral and innovative leadership is possible from a country the size of ours in this part of the world with the history that we have endured? All of these issues converge here in this resolution today. It may not seem like they do, but they do. The Honourable Member for St. Michael South, in his intervention, made reference to this earlier. Sir, there was a time when the climate conversation was just about the science. There was a lot of work, and sir, we have Nobel Prize winners from this country who contributed to that conversation and to that experimentation and to that research to understand what was going on to the climate, but further to that, how would it affect people in our part of the world? The world is now waking up to what we have been experiencing for some time. One of the reasons that we talk so much about loss and damage with respect to climate is that we are now experiencing the effects of historic loss and damage. So while the wildfires and the floods and the droughts all over the world are happening now because the world is now meeting us where we are, we have been enduring these effects for some time. But I recall, sir, when I worked on these issues as an international civil servant in multilateral development banks or in the UN system. And we were told that if you want to get financing related to climate, related to environment, or related to disaster risk reduction, you can't come talking about poverty or economic security. They will tell us in this part of the world, sir, but Barbados is a middle-income country. What, you don't have any poverty, so we can't give you money for that. And when we would come to say, well, we're being affected adversely by climate and by industrial decisions being made in your part of the world, they would tell us, but you have to make the climate argument. You have to show us the science, they would say, of what you want to do. So in other words, you can't come and get money to invest in your infrastructure. That's not climate. You can't come and get money to replace water mains. That's not climate, they said to us in the year 2000, in the year 1998. They would say to us, where is the science? We will give you money for wetlands. We will give you money for biodiversity. But if you're talking infrastructure, if you're talking roads and bridges and the fact that you have become indebted because you have had to repair 3 and 4 times the same bridge that was destroyed by different hurricanes that are increasing in intensity because of climate, they would say to us, that is infrastructure. That is not climate. And I was there at those tables in those conversations 20, 25 years ago, sir, although I may not look it, but I was there. When these conversations were happening at the time. And they would say to us, climate is not development, and as much as we said at the top of our lungs, from the depth of our souls, on behalf of the people of this part of the world, as much as we would say, but climate is affecting us. And in fact, when the fish go to other waters, the fisher folk in Dominica and in Barbados and in Grenada lose their livelihoods. And that is this is a matter of survival. They would say climate is not development. I still have the emails, sir. I go back and look at them from time to time. Because I must always be able to reflect and be reminded of how far we have come. This conversation did not begin this year. It did not even begin in 2018. We have been advocating as a country, led by Grenada, led by Barbados. We have been advocating and pleading for some time. But guess what? What changed the conversation? The conversation changed when Barbados was able to say to the rest of the world, look, this small money that y'all come in with will not suffice. In 2021, sir, when I had the distinction of leading the financing negotiations on behalf of the Alliance of Small Island States at the Glasgow Climate Summit, I think that at that time, I was perhaps the only minister with responsibility for economic affairs in the conversation, and people asked, well, where's your Minister of Environment? All of the other ministers of environment who were there, and ministers of climate and ministers of, said, but why are you here? This is a climate discussion. And ultimately, we had to say, the reason that we are here is to tell you that your small money for quote unquote humanitarian assistance isn't going to help us. Because what you want to do as the North, as the global North, as developed countries, is to wait until we are on our knees after a hurricane, trying to find medicine, trying to rebuild, trying to get our children back in school, trying to make sure our hospital is in shape, trying to make sure that our equipment that will save lives has not been destroyed. You want then to come in on your white horse and save the day with a little fine change. But sir, a little fine change would not suffice. The UNFCCC, the UN body that's responsible for all these climate negotiations and the world's climate response, decided that they would put aside $100 billion a year to try and help out these countries that are bothering them and complaining that we are adversely affected by climate. However, when we add up the numbers, we realize that in fact, that would not fill the gap at all. If you ask the member from Christchurch East who spoke earlier, at the time that he was responsible for water, what would it have costed us to do the work, to replace the mains, to be able to invest in the sanitation for the entire island, understanding that only a very small percentage of the island is actually hooked up to a sewage plant? It would have been on the order of hundreds of millions, as it is today. And so it took Barbados to say a few things. And where did this start? In 2021, in Glasgow, we said, look, the International Monetary Fund has something that they call special drawing rights. It is kind of like money, but not really. But it has the capacity to be able to unlock trillions. But there are many countries that don't need theirs. So can we find a way to take that money, because we know that to build what we need to build to withstand this crisis is on the order of trillions. So take some of that money and try and redirect it. And the international community sat up and said, there's an idea. And we got it into the decision in 2021. That was the start. Out of that conversation came the Bridgetown initiative. But even all during that time, what else did we say? We said that if we do have a hurricane, if we do have a slow onset event, like some of this rain that is just dripping, 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 and eventually is going to erode your road infrastructure, because not everything happens after a hurricane, you know. We have extreme weather events that are not going to trigger the little parametric insurance that they have there through CRIF. There's not even going to trigger that, because the way that they measure what is a disaster is a different way. So it doesn't have to be a hurricane. But there are ways in which we are affected. And we said that if we get a hurricane, well, we can't wait until after we are hit to go and try flying about the world begging for money. We need to make sure that we have access to money after the hurricane. And that's why we were able to get natural disaster clauses in our debt. And I say these things not because I care to repeat things that have already been explained, but I say these things to make it clear that these conversations that we have at the global level are not because we like to talk. They're because they really end up having benefits for the people of this country. Because guess what? If there's a hurricane and we still have to pay back debt, principal and interest, that means that we can't spend it on medicine. We can't spend it on securing the population. We can't spend it on rebuilding schools. And that's what those natural disaster clauses are about. And so bit by bit, we were the ones who had to show the world, look, we have the answers that y'all haven't been able to come up with. Barbados has developed and can demonstrate the answers. And that's why the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, the Honourable Prime Minister, was able to talk about the European Investment Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank actually now using what we've developed to replicate and be able to apply in other parts of the world. After we developed the natural disaster clauses, the IDB said, well, actually, we can put this in some of our instruments. And they came back with a way of doing that. And so we don't stand here to brag and say, look at what we've done because we want to pass an exam. We do it because, one, it brings benefits to the people of Barbados, but also, two, it brings benefits to other countries like us. One of the things that I have realized in this work of political service is that you don't help anything if you only do for yourself. You gotta bring the rest. Because guess what? If we are hit by a hurricane in this region and Barbados is the only people that are able to survive, we still have to disperse our efforts because we gotta go and help Grenada and we gotta go and help Dominica. Let's start now by making these things available to benefit everyone. So that, sir, has been the trajectory of the climate conversation. It started out on the science, and then it ended up on the finance and the governance. But this need for innovative instruments, sir, I dare say, does not start and end with climate, and we have to take the lessons from the climate conversation. Because the next frontier of inequality globally is going to be the digital divide. It already is. But I fear that we are in danger of addressing the digital divide in the same way that we stumble about in the dark on climate until we finally came to the understanding that we have to do things differently. Why do I say that? Because I am hearing conversations now about how the way to bridge the digital divide between the global north and the global south, the fact that the north is originating all the technology, is selling all the technology, is being able to benefit first from advances in artificial intelligence. Sir, we have walked this path before. In all the industrial revolutions that came before, it was people that look like how we in here finally look, that were on the side of being the ones who lagged behind, not only who lagged behind, but on whose backs other people got wealthy. If we look at what is happening in technology today, we stand the risk of having this technological industrial revolution follow that same pathway. Those who are now having conversations about the fact that countries like ours are way behind in technological advancement are trying to set up the same $100 billion a year fund that they tried to set up for climate. They're trying to have the conversation about the technology only and not about the global governance of how we get access to these things. And our responsibility is to be able to show to the world, let us not repeat the mistakes of the last 3 decades that we did with climate when it comes to issues of technology and artificial intelligence and access to that finance and access to that learning, access to those jobs. Let us make sure that we are able to start on a level playing field. Sir, this country will hear me from today and over the next several days and weeks say a lot of things about this sector and how it affects us. But the one thing I do want to say today is that there was a time, sir, when if you worked in programming, if you worked in computers, to access a computer, the primary way you did that was through a punch card. You access a computer with a punch card, and then you printed out something on paper. And you had a card reader and printer and CPU and disk drives and all of these things. And most of the interaction with those systems was physical. So you had to go into a room, and it was a big server room, and it was huge, and you would go into a room and you would put in something, and the only people that would have access were the 4 or 5 people in that company, in that institution, that had the card. But sir, we are no longer in that time. And countries like ours have to make the investments to make sure that our infrastructure can withstand the fact that anybody, anywhere in the world can access it. So when we bring cybercrime legislation that is new to this time, because the old Computer Misuse Act was not, when we bring a mutual assistance in criminal matters legislation to this place, when we handle the 2 breaches that we have had recently, and when we respond to an outage that took place, because we have to make more investments, not just in the systems, but in the people with the capacity to do what is required to keep our systems intact. What we are discussing here today, sir, is a sustainability-linked bond. But eventually, and sooner than we think, we are going to have to look at digital transformation-linked bonds. And why? Because we are now catching up, not just to underinvestment in the sector from the previous decade, but the fact that it is moving so quickly. So, sir, this is not just a conversation about climate and water and sanitation. This is a conversation about development and the wherewithal to make it happen. When we say that government is building a Tier 3 data center over 3 years, that is not to say that we're starting and ending there tomorrow. It means that it is a journey. It means that first we have to secure the infrastructure that we currently have, and in a modular way, be able to build out and build out and build out so that we are secure. You know, sir, sometimes I think that people believe that we say these things because we like to go and find ways to spend money. But the irony that the same legislation, and it's not to say that we are not concerned with protecting freedoms. In everything we do, we are. It is there in the Constitution and will never be removed. But the irony that at the same time that is being attacked in disingenuous ways, the country is fighting to maintain security literally at the same moment. So we have to get serious about what we want, because we can't have it on the left and on the right too. But more and more, we are going to have to realize that we are on a journey here. And the things that we need to be competitive and to be safe and to be productive and to create opportunities for our people, the things that we need to do today are not things that we could have done or needed to do 20 years ago. The kinds of financial instruments that we have here today and that we need today, like this swap, are required because this is a different time. And I feel as if the individual on the other side, because I can't say people, seems not to understand that there was once a time when we would have gone outside with a drinking board and blue soap. Well, I still like to use blue soap because I don't think anything replaces that. But no, we don't do that. We have to change the approaches in order to respond to the times in which we exist. And so, sir, I will have conversations with the country about this journey, but it is a journey where it is not just about government. We are most vulnerable when a person goes into an email and says that they think comes from a bank or comes from a colleague and clicks a link that says, update your information here, and go in and put in their bank information, but actually that is not the bank. Within institutions and outside of institutions. That is one of the very present dangers. And so, sir, you will see the country might get tired of me. But you will see and hear me and others talking about how we have to secure ourselves. And these things will happen from time to time. We have to make sure that we have the wherewithal to respond. Sir, we have a police service, and we have a defense force, and we have doors and windows with locks and alarm systems and cameras. A person who is sufficiently motivated by the wrong things still breaks in. So we have to make sure that we do as much as we can to keep them out. Hence the investments that we will need to be making in the coming weeks and months. But we also have to make sure that if they do manage somehow to get through, that we are able to respond. Sir, before I close, I also have to address something else that I think those on the other side are being disingenuous about. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, who led this resolution at the appropriate time, will also speak about some of the economic performance issues. But I keep hearing this notion. There's false information being presented on the debt, a failure to realize that we were at 176% debt to GDP and now we're at 105%, and the debt is not increasing. Somehow they want to blank that narrative. But the other thing that I hear recently is this notion that we are not spending and our capital expenditure is less than it has ever been, and it was higher under the Democratic Labour Party and all kinds of things. Sir, I brought this information in this honourable place before. Forgive me if I have to repeat myself. Because the fact is that over the 10 years of a Democratic Labour Party government, over 10 years, the total capital expenditure was $1,800 million. Over 10 years. Over 6 years of this Barbados Labour Party administration, the total capital expenditure was $1,835 million over 6 years. Sir, the average capital expenditure since we have been in service as a government has been $306 million compared to their average of $180 million over 10 years. Sir, I only come here to correct the record. I ain't come here to put on my ribbons and my fancy boots and prance up like the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the dressage horse. I only come here humbly to correct what has been put on the record by people who don't know better, and I forgive that, you know. I always tell my teams, I will never get upset for gaps in capacity or understanding. But I will get upset if you misrepresent to people what is the truth. Sir, we are not in ordinary times. But we have the extraordinary talent and capacity for work and for thinking and for execution that will get us to the next generation. I commend this resolution to this House, and I look forward to the different ways in which this kind of innovative approach will not just benefit this sector that we are discussing, but will continue to benefit us in digital transformation, in social transformation, and in all the parts of development with which we must be concerned. Sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable for Christchurch, East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank honourable members for their very robust contributions to this debate, and to say to the country through you, sir, that what we will see moving forward is a thorough commitment, sir, to not just fiscal prudence, but genuinely, sir, to make sure that the transformation that we have identified can be implemented and executed, and that people will see, sir, those benefits over time. Now, sir, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has left me a little lost for words, which is as my colleagues will say, is take some doing. But it is disappointing that basic things seem to escape the honourable member. Because I thought I made it clear that we were, well, not just that I made it clear, sir, but the resolution is pellucidly clear that, one, we are borrowing in Barbados dollars, and the Prime Minister would have indicated that that's the case. But he went through a series of questions which I will attempt to respond just for the purpose of the record, because it is critical that people appreciate in my wrap-up to this debate. As I said at the very beginning, you recall, Mr. Speaker, that I said if we did nothing, Barbados would have to continue to pay the existing debt for the next 20 years or so, and those monies will be expended, and we will not get a sewage plant. We won't get the pipes. We won't get the renewable energy plant. We won't get the battery storage, so that the Water Authority, which is the largest consumer of electricity in Barbados, to pump water to the thousands of homes and businesses across the country, sir, they won't see the benefit of that. If we wanted that, we have to go and seek additional financing for that. And it is that additional financing that, if we did nothing, is what would increase the debt, sir. And so I was at pains to make it clear that when we buy back this debt and issue it at a lower interest rate, the savings that we will achieve is what would be used, sir, to be able to finance the construction costs of the upgrade of the plant. Now, if that is not clear to the honourable member, then I can, over the course of a couple of spreadsheets, show him, sir, that the net present value between what we would spend if we did nothing, and that the math adds up in relation to what we have to do in order to make this happen. I thought it was clear, sir, to indicate that under normal circumstances, the savings will come every year, as we have done with the debt for nature swap, where every year in the appropriation exercise, sir, we send monies every 6 months, actually, twice a year, to the BESF for them to do the work that they're doing with the Marine Special Plan and those things. This is a different kind of arrangement in that those savings now are the financing mechanism to repay the loans. And let me be as clear as I could possibly be, sir, because he did ask a question on, about local debt versus foreign debt, but I'll come to that. He asked about whether or not these types of transactions are usually done when countries are in distress. Sir, Barbados was in distress between 2008 and 2018. And certainly when we came to office, sir, and I recall very clearly my days, sir, back at the Central Bank when a Treasury bill auction, the rate used to be 0.5%, sir. And that's a while ago. By the time we took office, a treasury bill, the treasury bill rate, sir, was 7.25%, which meant that the government of Barbados at the time, sir, was paying 7.25% every 90 days. When under the Barbados Labour Party in the past, sir, a treasury bill, same 90-day treasury bill, sir, was 0.5. Now, I know that the Honourable Leader likes, as he's been trying to say to Barbadians about things going up and all of these things. And somebody did raise with me the fact that today, government's debt, the yield, is not like how it was under the Democratic Labour Party. And the reason why that is the case, sir, is because people were not prepared to give the Democratic Labour Party the kind of money to hold on for too long. And therefore, when you think that you're talking about the difference between 75 cents and 95 cents for $1, and what that means, because as you know, sir, if somebody come to you and asks you to borrow $100 today, and then when the next time you see them, sir, you're in the ice can at 4. You understand? You understand the type of credit quality that you assess of that person, and you say, well, not me, he can't get a cent from me. But if you consider that you would give them some money, you say, okay, you gotta give me this back in a short space of time because I'm not prepared to lend you nothing over a long period of time because I can't trust that you can pay me back. That was the experience of the Democratic Labour Party. And therefore, those types of high cost interest terms, that was the experience of the Democratic Labour Party. So if you wanted to take the risk and get any money, you would actually get a fairly decent return. But having restored macroeconomic stability to the country, sir, investment is flowing both domestic, regional, and internationally back into the country, sir. Confidence has returned. We are now seeing the type of yields that would mean, sir, that the burden from a taxpayer perspective is reduced because it means that people will be able to give you more with respect to financing. Well, let me use the term, better terms with respect to financing so that your debt service would not be onerous in relation to the country. So the notion that we are using liability management and we are doing so in a proactive manner, sir, proactively, does not in any way suggest that any of this debt is in distress. Because what we are in fact doing, sir, is looking at the profile of the debt. And when you think about it, sir, rather than having to go and borrow new money, as they said, to do this exercise, we've brought the stakeholders around the table and said, hey guys, we want to be able to do this specific intervention. And therefore, we've crafted a solution that allows us to spend existing money that we will have to spend anyway to get the South Coast Sewage Plant upgraded and the other projects executed as well. Now, sir, let me remind the Chamber and the country through you, sir, because the question about whether you're replacing local debt with foreign debt, he raised. Now, sir, with the best of my knowledge, I don't know which part of Barbados we could go tonight, sir, when we leave here and get a sewage plant. I don't know which part of Barbados we could go now and go. I don't know there's anybody manufacturing pipes in Barbados, sir, and the fittings and all of that. So if the leader of the opposition knows where we can go to get a sewage plant and the fittings and the pipes and all that in Barbados tonight, I'll be the first to go and see for myself. Why do I raise that, sir? Because the investment that is required and the equipment that is required to deliver a plant, sir, comes from outside of Barbados. It has to be paid for in foreign currency, whatever that foreign currency is. So to suggest that somehow the other we are swapping domestic debt for foreign debt is really a misnomer, simply because, sir, there is no place in Barbados tonight that we could go and give somebody Barbadian dollars and get a sewage plant. It's a nonsensical argument, sir. So when we made the arrangement here, and I'll go through it again, sir, in detail, that the Green Climate Fund is giving Barbados $40 million in grant, sir. $30 million in a highly concessional loan. And the IDB is giving $40 million also in a highly concessional loan. So all told, sir, all told, we have $110 million, all told, together, a hybrid set of conditions that allows us to be able to utilize, to be able to procure the plant, the equipment, the software, all the fittings and all of those things that are required for the actual plant to be delivered. Because we will be the worst set of people to stand here tonight and tell you, sir, that we doing a loan in this case, is $600 million for the buyback, and expect Barbados to believe that $600 million Barbados dollars, sir, could get you, Barbados dollars, quote unquote, could get you a sewage plant and the fittings and all the equipment and all of that. There's no place in Barbados that you can get that equipment, sir. And therefore, the arrangement that we've put in place is to ensure that we have the financing up front, blended financing, as they said. We have the grant, and we have 2 concessional loans. And I reminded the chamber earlier, and I know the honourable member, he probably was not paying attention, that we already had a $40 million grant to upgrade the Bridgetown sewage plant, also to tertiary, from the said GCF. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are not, quote unquote, replacing local debt with foreign debt, because at the end of the day, sir, the country has to earn foreign exchange in order to service any debt obligation. And therefore, there's nothing to be misinterpreted here in relation to what we're doing. The country certainly has a healthy set of reserves, and we know that the kind of investment that will come from this type of intervention will help us bolster the earning of foreign exchange in the country. And once we're able to get the agricultural output, as we've done through changing in recent policy with the Agricultural Development Fund, to be able to ensure then that the loans coming from that facility to the agricultural sector are now focused on more climate resilient interventions, sir, that we are absolutely clear that we, over the course of time, that we should be able to see improved yields, certainly reduction in to some degree in predatory and the like, to allow us then to be able to have farmers get their investments and their produce to market, the agro-processing and all the other additional arrangements in place to be able to settle these matters. The other questions that the honourable member referred to, sir, policy objective on the limit of local loans. To be quite honest with you, Mr. Speaker, I was at a little loss when he raised that specific question, because we have, in the course of the debt restructuring, as you recall, sir, there are we had initially reduced the limits on the treasury bills because as a consequence of shifting a lot of the treasuries that the last government had built up into the longer paper, so we had reduced that. The special loans remain in place. The Local Loans Act remained as it was, because we understood that in order to, after the 4-year grace period of the debt restructuring, that we have resumed and that we would resume issuance of domestic debt. So I have to admit, sir, I don't know what he was talking about in respect of that particular thing, but perhaps he would enlighten the chamber at another stage in relation to that. And the reality of it is, sir, that his attempt to make it seem as if the government had done something that was extraordinary in relation to sewage flowing. I mean, the Needham's Point outfall, sir, has been there from the very beginning of the treatment plan. And so when he asked the question about whether or not this government was putting sewage into the sea, again, sir, it just doesn't make any sense. So I understand why he would want to suggest that the government was doing something nefarious, but this was the modus operandi from the very beginning of this exercise. So it's either that he didn't know that, or he knew and wanted to deliberately misinform the country that this government, in dealing with the rupture running along Highway 7, that we went and did something extraordinary. Because at the end of the day, sir, if the thing block up to go down to Needham's Point and it's spilling out onto the street, well, obviously it would make sense to redirect it. I mean, sir, you know, if you go home tonight and you flush your toilet and the thing back up, you're going to call the plumber, and the plumber can tell you, look, Skipper, something there, we got to redirect and do something to get to the well. I mean, that is normal common sense that any plumber would advise you to do, and you will find the money, sir, to make sure that you do that, because you're not going to leave your toilet leaking for 3 years. The last government did that. They left the toilet leaking for 3 years in this country. And therefore, what we are doing in relation to this specific intervention, sir, is simply to bring a sustainable solution to this matter that allows us the benefit of not having to increase the debt or the debt service in relation to how we are financing this. I will be happy to show the numbers on a spreadsheet with the honourable member and his team, because clearly they didn't quite get it. But I can say it to the people of this country, sir, we've gone through the numbers, and the focus now is, as I said at the very beginning, getting once the tender for the contractor, the person who will build the plant and do all of those works, are determined in a few weeks. We are able then, at the conclusion of this matter at the Senate, sir, we'll be able to execute this transaction once gazetted probably by Monday, or over the weekend, or by Monday. We would expect that by December 2nd, we can actually execute the buyback, sir. Given a day, give or take a day, around that specific date. And once that is done, all the other procedures and decisions that will flow from there will then see us be in a position that very early in the new year, sir, as I indicated, that Barbadians will actually start to see works being done. And as the member for Christchurch East indicated, I hope that the minister from the other place, and certainly the senior minister, will keep the country abreast in the same way that we did when all hell was breaking loose on the South Coast. Because it's important to understand that we are not hiding and doing nothing in the middle of the night, sir, so that nobody can accuse the government of falsely having monies disbursed from the CDB or any other body in relation to this particular matter. And again, sir, in a nasty attempt to try to associate this government with the activities of the last government when it comes to the Barbados Water Authority and the actions that are there. And that is well documented, sir, within all of the Auditor General's reports in this chamber. And therefore, there will be no need for anybody to write anything about this transaction. People will see the benefits in relation to not just the environment and better water quality and these things, but I think genuinely, sir, this is really a truly cohesive policy response that touches a number of critical areas that the government we have been wanting to address, and we found a mechanism that allows us to be able to address those concerns. And therefore, I say to Barbadians, as we conclude this Debt swap, sir, very quickly. We going to start the conversation about another one, sir. And that next one, very quickly, will focus on education, health, some housing matters, as well as citizen security. And therefore, again, as we start a new thrust in relation to how we're able to turn what has been social interventions in the past, sir, and leverage the expertise that we've had within health and education, and certainly within housing and citizen security, that we want to be able to pull those strands together, sir, in an even bigger deal as we take fresh guard, if you like, sir, with respect to renewed investment in social capital and turning that social capital, sir, into genuine opportunities. I won't go much further than that, but just to say that Barbados' ability to build resilience, not just physical resilience, and as the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central indicated, digital resilience. We need to focus on economic resilience, as well as climate resilience, as part of how we see Barbados' future. And therefore, the next transaction that we'll be working on will touch on a number of those very critical areas, which, as you know, sir, Barbados' strength has come from its investment in education, its investment in health, maintaining, certainly, as I said earlier, stability being our primary asset is important. And obviously, as we embark on more climate resilient housing, particularly, sir, for persons within the lower income area, to be able to ensure that as the storms get more intense, that we are able to build resilience to reduce the vulnerability of those persons, that we will see in those discussions coming out what I believe will be an even more transformational impact that will directly, sir, directly focus on some of those long-standing issues that still plague some communities and families across Barbados. And therefore, the government's approach to the use of proactive liability management, we've started with the environment, with the debt for nature swap, focusing on some broader climate issues in relation to water management, and the next transaction that we hope to be able to bring to this chamber will be larger than this one, focusing on those 4 thematic areas, which again, sir, goes to the heart as to how we see Barbados meeting that target by 2030, of 2035, but 2030 as the first point of departure, and able to ensure that you can achieve as close as possible to building resilience generally across those areas as possible. And so, sir, with those few words, I will beg to move that this resolution do now pass. I'm obliged.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Order number 15, sir. In the name of the Honourable Acting Leader of the House, to move the passing of a resolution that the Honourable the House of Assembly concur in the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate to the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024.
Honourable Acting Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the passing of a resolution that the Honourable the House of Assembly do concur in the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate with respect to the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024. Notice this resolution was given on the 19th of November 2024.
Question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Recommittal of papers, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I am commanded to lay the sovereign guarantee contract 5902/06C/BA between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank program to enhance climate and financial resilience in Barbados.
Government notices the committee.
Honourable Acting Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the resolution that the Barbados Fiscal Framework 2024 to 2025 to 2026 to 2027 and the 2025 to 2026 to 2027 to 2028 be debated in Parliament, and that any recommendations made in respect of the fiscal framework 24 to 25 to 26 to 27 and 25 to 26 to 27 to 28 be considered by the Cabinet.
Withdrawal.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the withdrawal, the passing resolution that the Barbados Fiscal Framework. I beg to move the withdrawal, sir, of the resolution that the Barbados Fiscal Framework 2024 to 2025 to 2026 to 2027 be debated in Parliament, and that any recommendations made in respect of the fiscal framework 2024 to 25 and 2026 to 27.
Honourable, there's a withdrawal. Huh? Order for withdrawal number 3.
Yes, sir. What? Okay.
He wants to withdraw.
So I had to lay the first one, to move the first one, and then give notice to move the first one to then withdraw the one that's there, sir.
So I remember you want to withdraw order number 3.
Order number 3, which was given notice of 22nd September 2023, as a substituted by resolution number 3, that I gave notice of today.
The question is that order number 3 be withdrawn. All those all members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Order number 3 is thereby withdrawn.
We Committee of Government Business.
Sir, we've come to the end of business for today. I beg to move the adjournment of the House to next Tuesday, sir, at 10 a.m.
26.
Tuesday the 26th at 10 a.m., sir. I was going to say 10 in the 4 a.m. in the forenoon, but it's 10 in the forenoon or 10 a.m., sir.
The question is that this honorable chair will be adjourned until Tuesday, the 26th day of November at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes are. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 26th day of November 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.